All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the stream. Hopefully you can all hear me. Whew. All right, I just literally got home 10 minutes ago from my morning appointment, so glad I was able to make the stream today. So yeah, today I'm going to be probably trying to work through some of these bugs here in the to-do list. I've also got another affix that I want to do, which will spawn a pillar that will block bullets when you kill an enemy. And what else? There are some other things in here. I actually have some enhancements that I want to do. Add a damage feature tag here. I also want to make life steal passive 75 kills by default. So this is one thing that I wanted to do. So we're going to be doing some tweaking. We're going to be doing some bug fixing and maybe some new content development. We'll see. But let's see. Yeah, we'll figure all that out. Cool. All right, so before I get into the work for today, I want to remind everyone that Gunforged releases on February 17th. So if you haven't yet, please wishlist it on Steam. And also just, yeah, get ready for the release. It's going to be a big one. And what else? Yeah, otherwise you could check out my links below for the Udemy courses and all that stuff. Anyway, everything you need to know about how to support my work is linked below, the most important thing being Gunforged. So please check that out if you haven't already. And yeah, it's going to be grind mode until the 17th. So I'm just going to be working every day, all day on just finishing things up until the release date. So let's get right into it. Hello, Kiki Dev. Welcome back, Luca. Hello, Metaphorical Code. Good to see you all again. Did you find out which content creator will play your game at release? Well, the plan is to have a bunch of them play, and not at release necessarily, but before release. So on Monday, I'm going to start reaching out to creators with Steam keys and whatnot, and try to build some wishlist momentum prior to the release date. So yeah. My hope is that there will be a bunch of people that play the game and not just one person. Hello, Arion. Welcome back. Great to see you. All right. So what should we do first? Should we get right into doing some difficult bugs, or should we... Yeah, maybe let's do that. Okay. So I have this issue with some bullets, which I think I know how to fix. I thought about it a little bit, but we'll see. So I'll show you what that looks like. If I go to my dungeon arena, I want to disable starting the wave, dungeon level. So the issue with this is that for the larger bullets, if the game will start, goodness, that took a while. Okay, so for the dragon gun, the problem is that if I go right up against the pillars here, the bullets get intercepted, so they're not flying properly. They're basically detecting a collision right there and dying immediately. Now the interesting thing is that it's not a problem up in this area. It's only a problem here. And I think that might be related to... I think it might be related to how the collisions are working. I can actually test this out. Let's see. So if I go to my bullet component, I already wrote a note in here about how to fix this, but I'm going to put a breakpoint here. And if I go to attach to process, Godot, so I'm going to see if this breakpoint is even happening. So in here, I'm doing a point check to see if the origin of the bullet as it's being created is inside of terrain, and then I can take some actions based on that. So that's not actually working, but in here it should. Yeah. Okay, so that explains that. That's interesting. So anyway, so I need to measure the distance between the player gun root and foot collision. Do vector2.down times this distance plus half shape width. Okay, so what that means is basically what's happening here is the player, the collisions for the terrain for the player are around the feet. So if I look at my player scene, where would it be? It's this one here. So this is the player. Why is that square? Oh, maybe it's not square. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. It's circular. Okay. So basically the top of this circle here is hitting the terrain when I'm right up against it. And what I need to do is I need to look at what the distance is between the top of that circle and the gun root here. So let me think. This would be a lot easier if I could actually see. There we go. So there's the gun root right there. And then we've got the circle. So I should just be able to measure this. Let's get rid of this. So that's 3 pixels. Okay. So the idea is that if I'm right up against a wall, the top of the circle is going to be against that collider, and the bullet is originating at this gun root position. It's not actually originating at the barrel of the gun, and the reason is because I need to check along the line from the gun root to the barrel of the gun to see if there's an enemy like standing right there. In other words, if the player's on top of an enemy. Sorry about that. The cat needed to be buried. I'd be missing a lot of collisions if I just spawned the bullet right at the barrel. It's possible that an enemy could be right on top of you and you just miss because the barrel is behind the enemy. So I'm doing a raycast between the gun root and the barrel position. But for the case where I'm up against a wall, this circle here is going to be right up against the wall. So, and then the bullet's going to start here. So I'm checking this point to see, is this point overlapping with terrain? If it is, then I need to shift this down 3 pixels and then half of the width of the bullet. I think that's going to be okay, but let's see. So vector2.down times 3. 3 is measured from the player terrain collision shape to the gun root. Okay, so that's the raycast origin. And then we need to do plus vector2.down times 3 plus half width offset. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. Let's see. So the reason I'm using half width offset is because, so the way that I'm offsetting this, if I go to my dragon bullet here, this shape is a radius of 16. Oh no, that will work. Yeah, that will work. So previously I was just hard coding the value 16, but now I'm accounting for the actual distance between the player terrain collision shape and the gun root. Then I'm adding it to the half shape offset. And the half shape offset is basically, I get the rectangle area that bounds this shape cast on the bullet, but then I take half of that. So I'm offsetting it by half. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just offsetting it by half in the down direction. I think this will fix it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very clearly, but the important thing is that I know what's going on. So if you're lost, then, well, sorry. I'm kidding. This is a very tough problem to explain because it relies on so much. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But basically, the problem is that if I spawn the bullet inside of the terrain, it's going to detect a collision immediately, and I need to do a bunch of checks to make sure that if the bullet would spawn inside the terrain, I need to do a bunch of checks to make sure that it actually does its checks from a safe place inside the terrain. That's essentially all that I'm doing here. And let's see if this works. It did not work. Okay, very brilliant, very brilliant. But I should see, let me see. I think this is correct. Yeah. I think when the receiver gets added, let me just double check this. When the receiver gets added, update positioning here. So receiver, parts root, move child. Yeah, so the receiver's position is being set to vector 2.0. So the receiver is going to be on this position, and when the check initial shape cast is called, this is actually done in this assembled gun here, create bullet in direction, and that is using the receiver's global position. So that's essentially the same as the gun root. So this origin coming into this check initial shape cast here is not being modified, but I'm doing a point query parameter, or a point query against the physics system based on that origin. And then I'm seeing if there was a collision, I'm going to modify that origin to offset it by 3 plus that half width offset. I wonder if I could do, wonder if I should just add a padding of 1 here. And then basically what's happening after that raycast origin, which is typically the origin, but will be modified if I'm up against a wall. It will then use that raycast origin to raycast terrain. Oh, maybe this is the problem. Let me think. Origin, raycast terrain. Check initial shape cast. Oh, okay. So actually, I think I have this code wrong. Raycast terrain. We want to go from the raycast origin to check to see if there's a terrain intersection between the raycast origin. Check shapecast. Okay, okay. Yeah, this is a little weird. Clear as mud, yeah. It is clear as mud, isn't it? I think this origin is wrong. So if I say raycast origin is equal to the gun root origin, we're going to do +3 plus half width offset, which is 16 in the case of the dragon. So that's +20. That might actually be exceeding this value here. Do I want this to be 2 position? Oh man, what am I doing? What am I doing? 2 position plus direction times half width offset. I think that's what I want to do. Because the 2 position here is the barrel's global position. So I want to go from the gun root or the modified gun root to the barrel position, but I also want to add that half shape width offset. So basically what's happening here is if I go to my dragon receiver, let me just visualize this. So if I do dragon barrel, dragon magazine, we don't really need the magazine. Yeah, I don't need the magazine. So if I instantiate this dragon bullet now, dragon bullet. Okay, so here is where that initial point is being set. And this dragon barrel position, so this point right here, I don't know if you could see that, but the barrel position is here. Actually, you know what I can do? Editable children. There we go. So this is the position here that that check is being done from. So it's being done from the receiver position to that barrel position here. But the problem is this bullet is so large that that distance may actually be... Yeah, so that was probably the problem. So what needs to happen here is that I check between that receiver position and that barrel front position for a terrain collision. But I need to check, I basically need to move this bullet over to that point and then check over here. I don't know how to point, but like I need to check the edge of the circle here. So that's going to be this distance plus half the shape width offset. I think that's correct. Anyway, let's see if it works. And then what I'm doing if there is a raycast collision is I'm just offsetting it to, I'm offsetting that bullet to be in a proper position. We'll see. Gluten Morgan. Gluten Morgan to you as well. Breakfast pretzel. A breakfast pretzel would be kind of good, actually. A breakfast pretzel like loaded with cheese and eggs. Ooh. Is that a thing? That should be a thing if it's not a thing. Okay, it's still not working. I think I need to simplify this again. This is going to be annoying. Gun dragon left. All right, let's just step through it. Let's step through it. So, attach to process. Well, this stream might already be off the rails. So, okay, so I've got this. My raycast origin is 255, 253. But I'm going to modify the raycast origin to account for the half width offset, which is 16, and also account for that. Yeah, so essentially what's happening now... Oh, I can't... Oh, yeah, I can do this. So what I'm doing is I'm saying... Vector draw down plus 3. So I'm putting it back to the top of the circle there. Plus half width offset plus 1. So essentially what I'm doing, if I turn off these visuals here, and if I have the dragon bullet... What's happening now is I'm taking this dragon bullet. Okay, we're going to turn this off. So I'm taking this dragon bullet and I'm basically making it so that its new raycast position here is right here, right? So if you could see, I'm making it so that the top of the dragon bullet circle is aligned with the top of the terrain collision shape for the player. And so that's what this step is doing. So that's changing the raycast origin there. And what did I do? I went from 253 in the Y to 273 in the Y. So that's 20. So that's exactly what I was expecting. So now with that new raycast origin, what I'm doing is I'm checking from that raycast origin, and then this is the thing that I need to look for. So this 2 position is 269 by default in the Y. But if I open up my debug console and I evaluate this thing, so that's 286. So we're going to go from, the X value is roughly the same. So we're going to go from 273 in the Y to a raycast to 286 in the Y. And then if that result should be null though. Yeah, that result is null. So then I set the shape cast global position to this previous position. Now why is that previous position not correct? Oh, I see. Okay, so there's one other thing I need to do here. I think I need to set this previous position to raycast origin. So this previous position here is basically the position from which this shapecast is going to run. So this check shapecast function. And the reason I'm using shapecasts here is because if I have a bullet that's extremely fast but has a small hitbox, there's a possibility that it can skip over an enemy hitbox during a frame, right? So if I had a bullet that was moving at 1,000 pixels per second and was only 3 pixels wide, and let's say I had an especially small enemy as well, it is possible that in between one frame and the next, the bullet will just phase through the enemy. And so to counteract that, I'm actually doing shape casts. So I say, okay, check along the length of this shape from the previous position to the new position to see if any collisions happened. That makes collisions much more reliable. But this shape cast is responsible for detecting enemy hits as well as terrain hits. So I basically just need to get all of these positions in order. So I'm setting this previous position to, let me think. I mean, if I was really sophisticated, oh man, I don't want to be sophisticated. I don't want to be sophisticated. Okay. If I was really sophisticated, I would actually do some like serious trigonometry here. Because it's possible that I could be aiming in this direction, like so, right? And so an offset. So if I'm aiming in this direction, right, you can see that the amount of offset that I should actually do, if I want to offset it along this trajectory, if I'm aiming this way, but I'm up against a wall, the amount of offset I should do is actually roughly 6 pixels, or no, I guess, in between 5 and 6 pixels along this vector. Yeah, I would have to do some serious trigonometry. I'm trying to fake it for the most part right now, which may not be the best solution. It may not actually work. So I don't know. We're gonna see if this works, and if it doesn't, then maybe we'll move on to something else. Because I really need to think about this. Oh, I'm invisible. I might need to have to do a deep dive into all of that code and like dramatically simplify it. There's just a lot of considerations that I have to make with the collision checking and everything. So it's a little bit sophisticated. Oh, I don't want this here. Get out of here. Okay, let's try it. Good morning, Corzo. Welcome back to the stream. The debugger, programmer's very last step, although it probably shouldn't be. Yeah, the problem is that getting the debugger running and like starting the game up with the debugger and getting all your breakpoints in order, like it's useful, it's very good, but a lot of times we as programmers I think I know what the issue is. I'm just going to throw a print statement here and see. And then we end up throwing around print statements for 15 minutes instead of like saying, well, the first print statement wasn't helpful, so let's do the debugger. I put on standby my survivors course because my semester just started and some friends started a subject on game dev, and I'm helping them in Unity. Oh, very nice. It's always good to have multiple game development tools under your belt, or experience with game development tools. Hello, Neozoid. Welcome back. Okay, any guesses if this is going to work? It didn't work. Okay. Wonder if I aim like straight down. It doesn't work. Now it's starting to break in this case as well. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm gonna need to just stare at this for a couple hours this afternoon. I think what I have to do is I'm just trying to fake it. I'm trying to get it, but I think I need to actually do some real trigonometry. Basically, the goal that I'm trying to accomplish is that, you know, if you're up against a wall if you're up against a wall, your bullet should always be shot. Like, it shouldn't be the case that if I'm standing here, my bullets are getting intercepted, or if I'm standing here, my bullets are getting intercepted, right? Like, that shouldn't happen. And it doesn't happen for the most part, for most of the bullets. The main problem is when the bullets have a considerable a size. Like, the dragon bullet is 16 pixels in radius, so it's actually like an entire tile wide, and that kind of throws off the calculations a little bit. So one option is just to say, hey, the dragon bullet's going to be a little bit wonky, so don't go up against terrain. But I want to come up with a permanent solution to this. So I'm just going to make a note of that. So I'll just leave that there. Okay, well, I've been defeated by the first bug. I have been defeated by the first bug. All right. Let's go see if we get defeated by the next one. All right. Frog bullet visuals are wrong after ricochet. This is a very specific one, but we're going to see. We're going to see. All right. It's a new day. It's a new bug. Okay. So this issue is if I go ahead and add to my frog gun, if I go ahead and add ricochet, the problem is that when the frogs are mid leap and they ricochet, their parabolic motion gets completely messed up, and so they start like it just looks weird. So it's like a tabletop game, and so far I'm doing the movement and tile logic for the turns of movement. Very nice. Yeah. How's it going? Are you enjoying it? Gun frog left. So now if the frogs ricochet, yeah, you can see that. That's like, that one was crazy. You see that? He keeps going up, and then he snaps down to the ground when his animation ends. So it's just a visual bug. It's not anything game breaking. Like, the collisions are still correct, but I do want to correct that. Now, the thing is, I actually don't know how to correct this. And so we're going to have a lot of fun trying to figure this out. So this frog travel definition, what's essentially happening is I'm determining the leap initial position, the leap y velocity, leap y position, leap y velocity. Air timer. So there's an amount of time that it's in the air. I'm setting the air time based on the leap distance. The leap distance needs to be adjusted based on the speed. I'm going to change that too, but I need to change this this code in here. So we've got this air time. So what's happening is that if the frog is leaping, we're changing this leap y velocity, leap y position, plus equals leap y velocity times delta. Leap y velocity. Do I just need to change the leap y velocity? Do I just need to negate this? Y final minus y initial. Y final minus y initial minus 0.5 times gravity times air time squared divided by air time. So this is the kinematic motion, like, physics equation here, which determines how much my y position should change every frame. I'm adding, what is this? Leap y velocity. Yeah, so I'm adding gravity every frame to it. I wonder if I can just do this. Leap y velocity is equal to negative leap y velocity. Or I might need to, do I need to reflect it? I might need to reflect it. Let me think. No, this is just a float value. That's probably not going to work. It's not a vector. It's just a float value. So, I don't know what I'm doing. It's been fun, and also worth noting that I'm figuring out how stuff works with tutorials of 7 years ago or something with Unity 4 versus Unity 6 with revamped UI. Yeah, that can be difficult for sure. I mean, that's one of the benefits of Godot is that since there's very relatively few tutorials compared to other engines, you don't really find out-of-date ones. Hello, Luan. Gunforged is looking better and better every day. I'm excited for the release. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. I'm very excited for the release as well. I'm just trying to get it as polished and perfect as possible. Polished and perfect as possible for the release. Hello, Hawk Game Dev. Happy Friday to you as well. All right, let's see if this works. Oh my gosh, did it work? Oh, no, it didn't. No, that didn't work at all. So what is the actual problem here? I wonder why. So if I'm going up, the problem is that my Y final and my Y initial maybe it would help if I drew this out in Paint. I'm not going to draw it in Paint, actually. I'm going to use A Sprite. I hate the way Paint feels. It's the most unintuitive program of all time. Classic Microsoft. Okay, so let's do this then. Okay, so if I have... So basically, if I have a frog going at a slightly upward or a steep upward angle, its Y velocity or its Y arc is going to look like this. So it's going to look like that. And what I end up doing is I'm taking... So this is Y final here, YF, and this is YI. So I'm subtracting these, so I'm getting the distance. So if it's going up the screen, that's going to end up being a positive number. Because this could be like 200, for instance, and this could be like 3, right? So 200 minus 3, 197. So that's my Y final minus Y initial. And then this is just, yeah, so this is the, what is this? This is the initial Y velocity. So this is actually, yeah, this is the initial Y velocity. And then as long as I'm applying gravity every frame to it, it's going to end up synchronizing perfectly with the X distance. So I'm actually separating the Y velocity from the X velocity. So the frog is actually moving at a constant speed. The frog is actually moving at a constant speed. That's not dark enough. In this direction. So the frog is moving along the ground at this direction. And as it moves, you could see that the Y velocity is just a straight float value, which means it just represents an up and down value. So as the frog is moving, so let's say that the frog is at this position here on that trajectory, basically what's being done is that the Y value at this point, if you just draw a straight line upward from this point, that's the Y value here. So you can see that the Y value remains actually quite large during that whole trajectory until it gets to the end, which is where it settles back down to 0, right? So, what happens when that frog ricochets off of the wall is this trajectory here actually becomes this now. But what's happened is that the distance is actually changing. So the parameters of that Y velocity are changing. But the problem is I could actually be up here, right? So like my Y position could be up here. Like if this is the wall, that I'm colliding with, the frog may be at this Y position. So I actually need it to go and do a different trajectory now so that it lands there. And then of course you have the same sort of, you know, this is the y offset here. Whoops. So I actually need to, oh man. So I'd actually need to determine like where along the curve it is, which is not going to be very easy. So is there a different way I can accomplish this? You know, it's a good tutorial. Firebellies, the link is in the description. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my courses are really good. Go buy them, please. Thank you. Thank you. I opened yesterday to remind myself how to do certain things. Very nice. I don't know why I'm trying to save this. So, actually, I wonder, let me think. Can I just reset the calculation but use a different, so now I can use this as the y initial here. So this point up here can now become yi, and then this becomes yf. And I can do that same calculation, but perhaps with a modified airtime? I think that's what I'd have to do. Leap y initial position, what is this? So everything's changing here. I wonder if I could just restart the calculation, but use the remaining airtime. I don't think that's going to work though, because this represents the total amount of time there. It's not the same as, you know, starting it. What this is assuming is this is assuming a full parabolic motion, but if I start halfway through, it's not going to be the same. And reversing the leap y velocity doesn't work. And it's accumulating gravity. So maybe, I wonder if negating it would work. Let me think. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? So, no, it wouldn't work. I honestly don't know how to solve this. I don't know if it's possible to solve it without actually figuring out where along this curve it should be. Because the problem is relatively trivial if you're having a start point that's on the ground and an end point that's on the ground, and you know your total airtime or you know your ground travel speed. Then like the parabolic motion becomes relatively trivial. The problem is if you interrupt that parabolic motion, let's not even say halfway through, because that could make the math really nice. If the parabolic motion is interrupted 75% of the way through it, and it reflects off the wall, it basically needs to I wonder, I don't think this is going to work, but I wonder if this is why we experiment. If I keep this leap y velocity separate from this gravity. So if I calculate a gravity accumulation separate from the leap y velocity, and then when I ricochet, I negate that leap y velocity, but I'm not negating the gravity accumulation. Is that going to work? I don't think that's going to work. There's something wrong with that, but I'm going to try it anyway, because this is how we learn. My math skills are not as strong as they should be, so this is a good learning opportunity for me. So gravity accumulation. So we're going to set gravity accumulation equals 0. Gravity accumulation is equal to plus equals gravity times delta. And then this leap y velocity here, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to add it in here instead. Leap velocity plus gravity accumulation. So now that that value is remaining static during the lifetime of the leap, I may be able to just negate it and then have it work. But I don't think, like I said, I don't think that's going to work, but we're going to see. Prob by the C's, sharp one eventually. Yeah, that'd be great. Very much appreciate that. How can you work effectively when you're streaming? I was trying to do some stuff just while recording, while speaking. Not even streaming, but for some reason it distracts a lot. It can be distracting. I guess the problem, or the thing is, like, so I'll ignore the chat for a couple minutes at a time, because that's like when I'm focused in on the problem that I'm doing. And then when I hit a natural break point in whatever my thought process is, like when I'm testing, that's when I can catch up on the chat. But otherwise, while I'm actually developing the stuff, if I'm basically just vocalizing my train of thought, then, you know, that's not a distraction really. Good morning, Christopher. How you doing? Gunfrog left. Nope, that didn't work. All right. The other option is to like fake it and to do raycasts to make sure that this is working. This is a very difficult problem. I knew that wasn't going to work. The question is, why doesn't it work? I think I just have to recalculate these conditions, but I have to... I have to start on the curve, which I don't know how to do off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up. So the y velocity in this case is going up and then down. And in this case, it needs to go up and then down. Okay, I'm going to try what I thought wasn't going to work, which is just recalculating all of these things using the new y initial position, but keeping the air time intact. I don't think that's going to work either. I really do think that I probably need to figure out how to implement the equations for determining what the trajectory should be given a point on the curve. But I'm going to go ahead and try this out. So leap destination. Oh, here's a different problem. I don't have... I don't really know what my leap destination is after the ricochet either. So that's going to be a problem too. Well, let me just try this. And if this doesn't work, then we'll move on again. We'll get defeated by 2 bugs today. I wonder if it would look all right if I just restarted the trajectory. Maybe that would be the simplest thing to do. So let me try this. So direction, bullet travel args. Leap Y position. This needs to be global position dot y plus visuals dot position dot y. So we need to account for that local offset there. Leap Y position. I think that's fine. Calculate trajectory. Now if I just do that in here, after the ricochet, calculate trajectory again with args and args. So now that I'm accounting for the visual offset in the Y initial and I'm just restarting the time, that might be, it might still look a little bit weird, but it certainly allows me to dodge all of those calculations that I'd have to make otherwise. And then this visuals position gets set to 0. Yeah, so as long as everything's being reset. All right, let's see. It's Friday, yeah. Happy Friday, y'all. Hello, Jose, welcome back. Got something exciting to start with personal training again tomorrow. Oh, very nice. That sounds fun. Have you thought about using Notion instead of Obsidian for game design and Kanban? First glance is pretty good at basic level, like Obsidian, but with easy to use DBs. I do not like Notion at all, not even a little bit. Notion, for some reason, is just completely, like every time I use Notion, I feel like, number one, I can't find anything. And number two, anytime I click anywhere on the screen, something that I don't want to happen happens. And it's just like, it's too much. And I'm kind of in a mode where I want to keep all of my data as local as possible. So I don't like relying on third-party services. The nice thing about Obsidian is that if it ever gets deprecated or goes out of business or whatever, all of my files are MD files, and I think it would be relatively easy for somebody in the community to spin up an open source note-taking app that is basically the same, that can read those MD files. So nothing against Notion. I mean, I'm an advocate for using the tools that are most comfortable to you, and if Notion works, then you should use it. But it's just not for me. It's not for me. Did I come up with Gunforged purely as a game that you would enjoy playing, or did you try to aim for a specific niche, make some kind of marketing research? Yeah, so I think that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not purely a game that's made... Let me put it this way. If I were to make the game that I would most enjoy playing, it would not be Gunforged. But it also would be a lot more work than Gunforged. So Gunforged is like a balance between a game type that I enjoy enough, but also something that's small enough in scope that is reasonable to finish, and also has a decent market for it. So one of the reasons why Gunforged used to be an Enter the Gungeon clone, but as Gunforged was in development, games like Vampire Survivors, Brotato, these kinds of games became really popular. And I enjoyed those kinds of games, but I also thought, well, Gunforged would be radically simplified if I borrowed that kind of combat from those games, that kind of design, and it's also still fun. So it's like there's an interplay between a lot of things. Like, yes, it's a game that I enjoy playing, but also a lot of the decisions I made were because it's easier, it's smaller in scope, and there's a proven audience for it. So it's like it's a bunch of things at once. I actually think this is really, I think this whole formula, I don't know if you could give them a name, because they're like condensed roguelikes is what I like to think of them as. So these are games where, you know, the combat takes like 30 seconds at most, and then you get an upgrade after every single wave, right? Like just every single time you're done with combat, boom, 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 upgrade. And games like Enter the Gungeon aren't necessarily like that, right? There's a lot more exploration to them. But like these condensed like roguelikes that take place on basically a single screen, and it's just focus on the combat, then you get your upgrades, then you combat, then upgrades, then combat. I really like that formula because you can still do interesting roguelike designs, I think, with that formula, but then it's a lot easier to build, especially as a solo developer. And also, like, I actually don't think that roguelikes with exploration are that fun. Like, I've said this before, I actually don't think Enter the Gungeon is that fun, just because there's a lot of dead space and there's a lot of emptiness. The environments are beautiful, but, you know, I just want to put my build together and kill stuff as fast as possible. And like, that's the brilliance of games like Vampire Survivors and Brotato and stuff like that. So I think my next game is going to follow that same kind of formula, because it's, like I said, it's easier to develop, but it's also super fun. How many wish lists are you aiming for Gunforged? I don't have a target. I have a decent amount of wish lists right now, but a lot of them are old. So I'm just gonna do a very healthy marketing push and then see what happens. And yes, I am going to be contacting streamers. Have you tried Cursor AI or maybe Copilot for development? They work pretty decent. No, I'm not comfortable with AI development. Not for any, like, the personal reason is I think if you rely too much on AI development, even as an experienced developer, eventually your code base is going to be completely alien to you. And I don't think that's a good idea. Because if AI is essentially writing your code and then you just like, you run it and you say, yep, the inputs work and the outputs are expected. If you do that for an entire code base, it's basically like another developer writing the code. And if you're responsible for the code, then your whole job then, if a bug comes up, is going to be to read somebody else's code and try to understand it. Whereas I think that the process of actually writing the code yourself and actually thinking through the problems, it does more for your domain knowledge of the code base. It might be faster to get things done with AI, but I guess my question, and the outstanding question I still have, is what costs does that have down the line as the system becomes more complex? You're essentially going to say no one in the organization has an intimate understanding of how the entire code base works because it's all been written by AI. So personally, I don't think it's a good idea. And my suspicion is that these, I mean, this is kind of a rant, but my suspicion is that these companies that are posting on the internet about how they, you know, 6x'd their productivity by using Copilot for everything, my suspicion is that as those code bases get more mature, they're actually going to run into piles of technical debt that are largely related to no developer having an intimate knowledge of the code base and how it actually works. So I'm very wary of using AI Copilot tools. Of course, AI for like very niche questions, or like how do I implement this, you know, whatever specific feature. Those are fine. Like I use that kind of resource quite frequently, but just like when it's actually writing your code for you, I don't think it's a good idea. Are you using power of two textures always when possible? Not really. I mean, I'm sticking to that convention somewhat, but I don't think it's necessary with modern engines. Hello, Aniki. The Primogen tried Copilot for a year and came to the same conclusion as you. He now has a video about how I can make programmers illiterate. Yeah, that's because it's not like these companies, they get, you know, what's the word? Starry-eyed by like the increased productivity, but it's like you are sacrificing future productivity. Like it's a trade-off. It's not just free productivity, you know? Yeah, to get an initial prototype built, maybe AI lets you do that 10 times faster. But if your prototype catches on and you start throwing more code onto that AI code, eventually it's going to get to the point where no one understands it, and you're going to be implementing simple features is going to become a slog because no one understands the code. That's my suspicion anyway, based on my experience. But I'm completely open to the idea that I might be wrong about that. I find that it's not even productive at all because I end up reading AI written code just because I don't trust that it will work. Yeah, that's that problem. Although I do think it's reasonable to expect that AI code will become even more accurate in the future. But yeah, that is definitely a problem right now. Hello, Mycoon. Oh, welcome back. Even if it does, yeah. So anyway, that's I'm very wary, let's just say, of the AI programming. But you know, give it a couple of years, and if the industry has decided, yeah, that's like the standard now, then you know, that will be the standard. You know, there was a time before even IDEs were a thing, right? And now it's like if you don't use an IDE, you're like incompetent. Anyway, I'm gonna try this. Okay. I think this is actually working just fine. Oh, that actually might be good. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good solution. So rather than being super specific about it, I just reset. Okay, that's working fine. Yeah, that's good. I just wanted the visuals to be correct. The frogs are so cute. So the only weird thing is that when they're at the end of their jump, they get like a whole new trajectory, and so that's like they're bounced, like they're really leaping off the walls, but that's fine. That's better than the visual problems that I was having before. So I'm glad that I was able to address that. Let's do this. Recalculate trajectory of frog based on of frog when ricochet. So that's good. The other thing that I want to do is I want to make this distance based on the speed of the bullet. What am I doing? Frog travel definition. Oh, and here. So this global position plus direction. So I want to get the speed. So times, let's do randef range var speed is equal to args dot gun bullet component dot gun stats dot bullet speed. Direction times, let's do bullets, let's do bullet speed minus 32. Leap destination. Well, let's do speed. Let's do half speed. Okay, and then let's do half speed divided by 2 and half speed. So what this should mean is that the frog will spend up to half a second in the air, which might be too much, but it will spend quarter of a second in the air minimum and half a second maximum. I want to see what that does. The problem was that for bullets that were moving very fast, the frogs basically weren't leaping at all because the distance, they were only traveling a max of 64 pixels. And so if your bullet speed is 300, you're traversing 64 pixels in like a quarter of a second, something like that. And so that's just almost not enough time for the frogs to be airborne. And actually, that's not even enough time either. So I might do... Let's just do this. Speed. Divided by 2 speed. So that was a little bit too low even. Gunforged support controller input. Not at release, it won't. If the game is really popular or more popular than I'm expecting it to be, or than I'm hoping that it will be, and it will be a common point of feedback, like we need controller support, but if Gunforged is popular enough, if it's making me a good amount of money to where I feel comfortable with adding controller support, then I will add that. But it's not going to be available at release, no. Devin right now is Premiere Code LLM. The trailer on Steam is the definitive one? Yeah. I may update the trailer again, but probably not. So yeah, the trailer on Steam is like, because it showcases all of the levels, the new levels and whatnot. So this is still too much. Speed times 0.75 and speed times. So basically, I mean, this is basically saying either spend half a second in the air or, well, anywhere from half a second to 3/4 of a second in the air. Which I suspect for very fast moving bullets is going to be quite funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that might be too much even, but let me try this. Get rid of the ricochet. Bullet speed contribution. Let's turn this up to 200. I'm also working on a roguelike, but I'm struggling to differentiate from Gungeon. How else do you think Gunforged differentiates itself from other games in the genre? So Enter the Gungeon went really deep thematically on just everything being a gun, right? To the point where like even the enemies were bullets. My theme is more just like the only coherent part about this game is that everything's goofy, right? So like I'm not afraid of just adding ridiculous stuff that doesn't necessarily have to make sense in the world. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Enter the Gungeon, like there were predefined guns that you got. Whereas in my game, what I'm doing is I'm borrowing more from Noita with the gun building system. So it is possible to get thematically coherent guns like these things, right? But for the most part, your guns are going to be wacky combinations of all different parts of different guns. And then, of course, you have the rune system, which changes how the bullets of those guns behave. So that's another differentiation. Enter the Gungeon has exploration. Mine doesn't. So mine is just like a single screen experience and more like Brotato in that sense. So I think what you can do is for differentiation, first of all, I wouldn't worry too much about differentiation. Obviously, you don't want to be a blatant ripoff, but giving players more of what they want is not a problem, in my opinion. And I'm speaking not as a game developer here, but as a player myself. Like I'm not offended when a developer offers me a game that is similar to a game that I really love. I actually want that as a player, right? I want more of the great games that I enjoy. But yeah, you just don't want to make it an obvious ripoff. But I think borrowing pieces and parts of systems that you like, and then trying to do your own things too. Like one thing that I'm doing for the meta progression system that I don't really see any other game do is that this gold that you get for the meta upgrade system is the same gold that you loot in game. So instead of separating out, like having 3 different currencies that you can spend, it's all just one currency. So like you can either spend this gold during your run, or you can hold on to it and you can spend it on the meta upgrades, or you can use it to gamble at the prize wheel, right? Like it's like a small thing like that, but that makes it relatively different, you know? Okay, that's looking much better. Okay, so now their leap works with increased bullet speed now. Okay, those were some things that I definitely wanted to address. So was this 33? I don't know. I'll just discard that change. Can I close this? Let me close it. Okay, whatever. Discard those. Okay. Okay, so I definitely wanted to make those changes. Okay, so that's done. B bullets appear in top left corner on death. Okay, so this is another interesting issue. I think I'm gonna save that. I'll do that off stream. I'm tired of working on bugs. I'm tired of digging holes, Grandpa. Remember that? Anyway, make lifesteal passive. I'm gonna do this and then also add this damage feature tag to passives and affixes. Frauge, yes, indeed. Okay, we're at the 1 hour mark, so I'm gonna take a quick break, a 2-minute break. So just give me a couple minutes. I'll be right back and then we'll continue working. We'll do some actual content stuff now. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna make this tweak to the lifesteal passive. I'm going to add a damage feature tag to passives and affixes, and then might do this affix afterwards. But maybe we'll pull something in from the... Maybe we could work on a different gun. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Add achievement for beating every boss with... Oh, that would be interesting. Okay. Anyway, give me a couple minutes. I'll be right back, and then we'll continue on this work. In the meantime, please, please check out the links in the description below for all the ways that you can support me. That's too dang bad. Yeah, Grandpa. Real ones know. All right. I'll be right back in just a couple minutes. All right, let's get back into it. How did I end up naming the flesh monster, or you were cooking a few days back? That one is called, this was at the suggestion of one of my chat viewers, or one of my stream viewers. I think it was the red velvet, but I could be mistaken. Grill or be grilled is the name of the passive. If the flesh monster doesn't have a name, we can just call him George, I guess. Okay, so let's get right into this. So let's change this lifesteal passive. Lifesteal. So I'm gonna do this. 75 minus 0 minus 1 times 25. We're gonna make this stack 2 times. 75th and 50th. Okay, so the TH is gonna be correct here. Hello, Panda Gaming. Lovely to see more indie games. How did you decide to start game development, and what has kept you going through the difficulties of what is game dev entirely? That is a good question. So, I mean, I started doing game development when I was like 14 years old with Game Maker, the old version of Game Maker, Studio 7 or 8 or something like that. And I don't know, I just always had an interest in learning how to do it and building games. So I started when I was 14, and it's mostly just been a hobby for my entire life. I've published some games on Steam. They're not the best games in the world. I have a lot of game jams that I've published, but mostly I was just doing that stuff for fun. And then in the back of my mind, I always had, you know, the idea that everyone has, which is like, oh, it would be nice to do this full time, you know? And yeah, what has kept me going through the difficulties of what is game dev entirely? That's a good question. I think probably why I've remained interested in game dev for so long is that there are so many different challenges that it never gets boring, right? So, you know, you have to learn how to do programming, which is something that I was already, that was my profession for a long time. I guess you could still call it my profession. I'm just kind of like on a hiatus depending on how this goes, but that was my profession for a long time. But even still, like learning how to apply mathematics more in, you know, 2D, you know, environments, 3D environments with linear algebra and trigonometry and all that stuff. So there's a challenge in learning that and trying to figure out spatial problems, geometric problems. There's a challenge in just making a game fun to begin with. There's a challenge in managing the scope. There's a challenge in producing good art, mixing correct sounds, finding good music, or paying somebody to make good music. And then, of course, the challenge of marketing and making a nice, attention-grabbing Steam page. Like, this is all stuff that I'm constantly learning and getting better at. So there's like an inexhaustible amount of skills that you can just keep getting better at. And that's really what makes things super engaging. When things start to get boring is when you just are on autopilot and nothing is really challenging you. At least that's in my experience. And so I think one of the reasons game development has had staying power as a hobby of mine and now like an attempted profession is that there's just so much to learn. Like every time I make a new game, I'm learning new stuff, whether it's directly related to the gameplay programming or to the tangentially related things like marketing and all that stuff. So wouldn't having to learn all that once make it very easily burn out and get overwhelmed? I mean, it depends on how you think about it. You know, if you are impatient, then yeah, I think that can be the case. But I've always been somebody that has a good amount of long-term patience, where if it takes me several years to get something done, that's not necessarily like a daunting task for me. So yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. It depends largely on what you're just naturally like, I think. But anyway, let's see. On entity died. Target enemies. So current enemies greater than or equal to target enemies. Current enemies minus equals target enemies. And then in here, target enemies based. So let's change this. Private int. Protected override void stack added. Target enemies is equal to 75 minus occurrences minus 1 times 25. Okay, I'm gonna make this 26 by default, just so that I can test it. Mostly asking because I'm working on a game or two myself, but I fail. Hold on a second. I fail to keep myself motivated often, or I tend to overscope or overestimate my abilities. Yeah, I think you just have to realize that you're gonna probably encounter a lot of failures. You're probably gonna have to release a bunch of games that are not that great. You're gonna have to dedicate a lot of time to studying, pixel art, game design, all that kind of stuff. You're gonna end up with problems that seem intractable that you have to find a solution to. I would say that what you're experiencing is just natural. And the motivation question, I like to just say it's not a question of motivation, it's a question of discipline. Like, you have to be able to sit down and work on your game with consistency, even when it's not fun to do so. And there, there's a limit to that. Like, you can't, if the game is not fun just because it's just fundamentally flawed, then maybe it is a good idea to drop it. But, there were several parts of Gunforged development where I had these major design problems that I basically just had to continue to work through. I mean, I said this before, but like these gun forging UIs, I don't have one up right now, but I had to rewrite and restructure and redesign a lot of the UIs in the game 5 times. And the thing you have to understand about that is I very much dislike doing UI programming for the game. So having to do a very complicated UI 5 different times because the game design changed and the UI no longer supported the new design was very, I was not motivated to do that at all, but I just had to sit down and just work on it. So I think that there's, you just have to, it's a tough, it's tough. I'm not trying to pretend like it's trivial, but it's, a lot of times you just have to work through it when you're not motivated. And you also have to be able to realize when you need to cut the scope or when your game potentially is just fundamentally flawed and just is not workable. Professional studios cancel games all the time. So it's not like, any game you make is going to be good eventually. That's not necessarily the case either. But, you could look at my itch. You can go to my itch page and you can see all the games that I publish. Some of them are better than others. A lot of them are kind of mediocre. Some of them are pretty good and great even. But that's just all part of the process, That's not right. I forgot to put pipes around this. Here we go. My little parsing language here. Okay. We're 75th bleeding enemy, so let's try this. Gun, worm left. Spawn rat. Okay, add lifesteal. I should see a health globe drop now. Oops, I didn't kill him with bleed. Oh, you know what? It's not gonna work. Wait a minute. Oh, it's just getting reset. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I'm gonna set the current enemies to 55 just to test this. So I'm just making sure that if I'm exceeding the count, let's see, actually. Gunworm left, spawn rat, bam, die. Gun or add passive lifesteal. I forgot to do that. Add passive lifesteal. So now I should see a health globe drop. There we go. And this should be reset to, yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. So that tweak is done. So lifesteal is just a little bit too strong, so I'm bumping that number up to 75, but then adding a second stack that can bring it down back to 50. The nice thing about these stacks, these passive stacks, is that you only get, what is it, 19? You only get 19 guaranteed passive choices during the run. Is that true? Or is it 18? I think it's 18. You only get 18 passive choices during the run. And so that means that if 2 of your choices are the lifesteal, then you're potentially forsaking damage or other defensive capabilities. So that's a very nice way of like naturally balancing the game, is that the more passives you choose and the more you stack a single passive, the less, you know, room your build has, or the less varied your build is. So it's very interesting. I did not intentionally design it this way, but it's just one of the things that I'm noticing as a consequence of the design, which is cool. Lifesteal tweaks. Okay, so that one's done. Bam. Let's add a damage feature tag now to a bunch of things. Have you tried any other game engines besides Godot and GameMaker? I tried a little bit of Unity. I did a little bit of Unreal in college, but I don't know enough about Unity or Unreal to have a good opinion on those things. So I was thinking maybe I should try short game jams in order to help with scoping. Yes, that's a great idea. And kind of slowly develop my skills instead of attempting to learn all at once. Yeah, another thing that so for new game developers, I think one of the problems too is that, and this was true of me early on, is that when you start to build a game, you start to think of all the features you can add. Oh, it'd be cool to add this, be cool to add that, could be cool to add this. And a lot of times that leads to an incoherent design for inexperienced game developers, myself included. And so one of the things that you can do as an exercise is like come up with your core central mechanic and then make everything revolve around that mechanic, like literally everything, you know? That's also a very good exercise because it keeps the scope nice and limited. But then because you're adopting that constraint, you start to come up with creative ways of building the game around that core mechanic. What you don't want to get into as a beginner game developer, especially, is like coming up with a whole suite of mechanics, but then like they don't interact with each other cohesively. But if you say, this is the mechanic, this is the only thing that's in the game, then you try to design the game around that. That can be a very helpful exercise as well. Having ADHD kind of makes it worse, yeah. That's true. I have not used any game frameworks or libraries. I mean, Pygame, but again, that was just in college. It wasn't a serious effort. Hello, Splat. Love how Gunforged coming along. Working on a school project, but my movement is rubbish. How do your velocity and pathfind components work? Do you mind showing us the code? Yeah, I can go over that really quick. So I have a velocity component in here. I'm not going to go through everything in here, but I think the basic thing, the important thing is with velocities, what you probably want is you want frictions and accelerations. In my case, I'm using both the same. I have what I call an acceleration coefficient, and that essentially determines how quickly the velocity vector ramps up to the target speed or target velocity. And the way that I'm using it is I'm using a very natural way of doing it, frame rate independent lerp using the natural exponent. So this is a little bit complicated, but I'm using lerp. The problem with lerp is it's not frame rate independent by default, meaning that you can't just put in your little t value here or the weight value as the second argument. You can't just do, a lot of new developers want to do 0.1 times, delta. That works, right? And the problem is, no, it doesn't, because this weight is a percentage, right? It's a percentage toward the target. And if you are on a lower frame rate, you are going to make larger leaps toward the target than if you're on a higher frame rate every frame. And if the frame rates are different enough, like if you're at 30 FPS and 120 FPS, you actually get a difference in your movement behavior based on the frame rate. And this is true of any lerp that you're doing that's a frame by frame basis. So this weight here is a way of making it frame rate independent, so that if you're running on 30 FPS or 120 FPS, the result is going to be the same in all cases. In other words, the velocity is going to be the same value after X seconds, regardless of the frame rate. And this math dot a natural exponent with this negative acceleration coefficient. This is just the mathematical way of making that frame rate independent. But the acceleration coefficient is the important thing. I can tweak this based on how slowly or quickly I want the player to, or any entity to, accelerate to its velocity. So for entities that are floating in the air, I have a very low acceleration coefficient, which means that it takes them quite a long time to get up to speed. But the other thing is that since I'm applying this always, this accelerate to velocity takes in a target velocity, you also get nice natural curve motions when they're changing direction, right? Because the velocity can only change so much every frame based on this acceleration coefficient. And so if you have a very low acceleration coefficient, you get a nice slidey kind of enemy that's, you know, just moving around very smoothly around the level. But if you crank this up quite high, then you get snappier movement, like for the player. But the thing is, like, you still get a handful of frames where after you release the key to move, there's still a handful of frames where the player decelerates, and that just feels very natural. It feels less janky than like the start stop of like having absolute values, but it's barely noticeable. And I think that makes movement feel really good. And the nice thing too is that it handles like decelerations very nice, because if I say accelerate to velocity vector 2.0, well then it's just gonna lerp to 0 velocity using that acceleration coefficient. A lot of people handle like accelerations and frictions differently, and that would be especially important if you had like a platformer with different surfaces that have different friction values, but for my game it's not that important. What I try to do right now is build the GDD first, and once I'm okay with it, see if it's overscoped, remove all that is unnecessary, and then stop scoping and start working on it. Yeah, that's a good approach too, I think. All right, let's see. Damage feature tag, yeah. Feature tag. Damage. Okay, build, and now I'll just have to click through all my passives and figure out. So again, these feature tags are for the biased weighting. So all the loot tables in the game for the passives and the affixes are biased in, if you have, let's say, anything that's tagged with blood or bleed, which I should actually change that. If you have anything that's tagged with bleed, then other things in the game that are tagged with bleed become more common. And that is a way of biasing the loot tables in favor of the player, so it's easier to get the build that you're trying to get. It's not guaranteed, but you're not totally up to the mercy of like RNG. It's like the tables are actually being biased in your favor in the direction that your build is going, which ends up producing a much more fun runs, in my opinion. But yeah, let's see. So do I just want to put damage on all this stuff too? Oops. Blood, damage. So I'll do that. Blood hit. Yeah, we'll do this one. Blood, health. I don't know if I want to do damage on that one. I think I'll use damage for things that do direct damage. That's evasion, burning meteor. This one is fire and damage. Dash clear bullets, that's fine. Dash reload. Feature tags, we can add, oh, why is this? Let's do evasion here and damage there. Dash saw, oil, blood, evasion. I think that's fine. This one can definitely be damage. Exact heal, that's health. Explosion on magazine, empty. Damage, fairy godmothers. Those have so many stacks on them. I should build this again. Blessed by RNGesus, yeah. Unsolicited advice. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I think that's good advice. I don't know. I mean, we're all still trying to figure it out. I wouldn't take anything that I say as like absolute truth, because I'm just sharing how I'm currently thinking about these things, but I have not made a commercially successful game yet, so you know, just keep that in mind. There are certainly better authorities to listen to on this issue. Loot goblin. I don't think I want that. Yeah, let's not do a loot goblin here. Max health, max stamina. Missing health damage, that's damage. Movement speed, that should be evasion. Movement speed, build up evasion. Oil aura. Yep, oil fire. I'm trying to decide. I'm kind of inconsistently applying these damage tags, but I'm trying to not to make, because the more tags something has, the more common it will be probably. So I'm reserving the damage for things like this that don't have any feature tags. And I'm mostly reserving it for things that deal direct damage as well. But like I said, it's a little bit inconsistent how I'm applying this. Shade. Dashing last. Oh, here we go. This should be evasion. This doesn't have a proper tag on it. There we go. Stamina as health, evasion. I might add the health tag on this as well. Yeah. Static. That's just got shock on it. Shock. Let's add damage to this as well. Zap, shock, damage. Okay, so that's all the passives. Let's do the affixes now. Bullet, follow, crosshair. Bullet, split. Why are these all extended? Chain, lightning, shock, damage. Chicken, damage. Critical chance. I buffed this yesterday too. Double damage. Oh, that's definitely damage. Duplicate. That's not anything. Empty slot damage. That's damage. Explode. That's damage. Fire. I mean, this could be damage as well, but maybe not. Unload. Follow up. Haunt. Increasing. So any of the affixes or any of the effects that deal damage over time, I'm not going to put the damage tag on. Now this one probably can have damage on it. Midas touch. Oil plasmoid. Here we go. Oops. Damage. Popcorn. Popcorn doesn't do any direct damage, so we'll not do that. Ricochet. Shock. Shock grenade. I think makes sense to do damage on this one. Totem, this one definitely just needs the damage because that's all it does. Okay, so I'm gonna have to play test that, but I think that makes sense. Add damage feature tag. So that's just an extra way that I can control the biasing of all the things. Alrighty, so let's see, how much time do we got? Okay, killing an enemy spawns a pillar that blocks enemy bullets. That could be an affix that I add. There's also this axe throwing gun that I want to do, and also this printer Xerox gun. A printer gun, that would be so funny. With the copycat as innate affixes. I want to do gain a permanent minion that rotates around you and blocks bullets. Maybe I just make that a shield. Oops. Rune randomizer machine that shuffles all runes in rune inventory. I wonder. Might change this. So I wanted to create a minion that rotates around you and blocks bullets, but I wonder if I should make this something more interesting, like there's a minion that stays behind you and blocks bullets that come from the opposite aim direction or something like that. I think that'd be interesting. I want to do an encounter for a rune randomizer machine. That would be cool. Improve thunderstorm passive sound and visuals. Add more stats. Show what killed the player. I need to think about that. Sound effect particles when completing a weapon set. Yeah. I'm gonna do this one. Killing an enemy spawns a pillar that blocks enemy bullets. I think that would be interesting. I'm trying to think if there's something even more interesting I can do with that. Yeah, maybe I'll just try that and see, do some playtesting. In dash and knockbacks, how do you handle that as well? Yeah, so in that I have like a velocity override. So I'm doing the same velocity calculations for knockbacks, but I just temporarily override like the natural velocity of the character with the new velocity override, and then that has a different acceleration coefficient so that, you know, I set a knockback speed in a certain direction and then with a lower coefficient so that it gets knocked back and then it slows down slower than it otherwise would. And then once it recovers, then it kicks back into its normal movement speed and coefficient. So yeah, you'll get better at it, Panda Gaming. It's one of those things where you just need to get some experience. I already have Secret Service. Yeah, that is not the same though. That will, when you're taking damage, the Secret Service gets sacrificed. This is more like it just actively blocks bullets and it's permanent. So it's a kind of a different type of mitigation, damage mitigation. But maybe it shouldn't be a minion. Maybe it could just be like a floating shield or something. Or maybe this is just a bad idea. Do I have any other passive ideas? Deployable turret? No. Yeah. I don't like this. Delete that one. Delete this one. Delete this one. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna see if that feels good. Yeah, I think that's right, Jesse. Do you have a decoy that draws aggro? No, I would love to do something like that, but I just don't have the support in my enemy system for doing that. I have to rewrite a bunch of code, which is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just I'm trying to stick to stuff that can already be easily supported by what's in game. But that would be a very interesting one. Anyway, let's try this pillar affix. I'm going to see how this looks. I'm not going to do any art for it. I'm just going to see how it ends up feeling. I have a lot of P affixes. Pillar, plasmoid, poison, popcorn. I wonder if I should tag this with evasion. Yeah, evasion seems good. Copy, paste, make unique. Okay. Pillar affix. We won't do the description just yet here. Okay, so health component has health remaining. Bullet count. Okay, so in here, handler arguments dot event dot bullet component get base level entities dot add child pillar. That should be basically all I need to do. Oops. Cool. Let's create that pillar scene. Game object entity, bam, in here. Let's create a static body 2D, and then let's also create a sprite 2D. New placeholder texture. Let's do 16 by 32 maybe. Okay, so we got the static body 2D. Where's my bubble? Detective bubble. This is just the enemy bullet intercept. Okay, so enemy bullet intercept, add child node, collision shape 2D, new rectangle shape. This one is relatively easy. I'm gonna add a timer. We'll just make it 2 seconds. Scripts, game object entity pillar. Game.gameObject.entity. Node private timer. Public override void ready. Timer.timeout. Plus equals on timer timeout. All right, I think that's basically it. I have to figure out what happens when you have multiple copies of this, but maybe we'll just make it like spawn the pillars in a ring or something. Do enemies have friendly fire? You can ricochet a bullet off the player and make everyone else's problem as a passive ability. That is an interesting idea. There is no friendly fire on enemies. I think what I would do is, instead of having the enemy bullets ricochet, I think I'd probably just create a new player bullet. So it's like you absorb the bullet and then it shoots out at like the nearest enemy or something. So it's kind of like the same thing. That is an interesting idea. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Pillar. I don't have a description for it, so let's see. Oh, I didn't kill him with the bullet. I gotta kill him with the bullet. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I am not ready to test this. I forgot to put that in here. Spawns. Occurrences equals 1, string.empty. Spawns blank pillars if that block enemy bullets if an enemy is killed on bullet hit. Okay. All right, now let's try it. Have you considered sending anonymous usage stats back to see which guns affixes get used so you can see what people like? Maybe even for balancing purposes? No, I mean, I considered that? Yes. Setting up that entire system is kind of a lot. I've just been kind of relying on my playtesting and what the patterns that I'm noticing in myself, because it's pretty easy to notice when you're like very much favoring a certain type of gun. And the way that I've kind of addressed that problem is I've increased the variability of the gun stats and how they generate with the guns. And also, here's the thing that I did the other day. So I noticed that basically it was always the case that I was choosing gun parts that had a fire rate of over four bullets per second. And so all the guns felt the same in terms of their fire rate. And the reason why that was happening is because the stat that's shown to the player is the DPS calculation, and the DPS calculation is bullet damage times bullets per second, right? So if I do 10 damage with a single bullet and I'm firing 4 bullets per second, my damage per second is 40. So the damage per second is directly related to how many bullets you can shoot per second. And that was why I was always choosing gun parts with high fire rates, because they were always the ones that dealt the most damage. So what I did last night is I actually changed how the damage and the bullets per second is calculated, such that gun parts that are randomized such that they have a lower fire rate have their bullet damage increased to compensate. And the reverse is true, so that gun parts that generate, let's say you generate a gun part that has 6 bullets per second, the damage per bullet is brought down to compensate for that. And so what I've basically done is I've equalized the DPS numbers, the final DPS number, between low fire rate gun parts and high fire rate gun parts. And so now that actually makes choosing a gun much more interesting, because you might have a gun part that has a lower DPS value but a higher fire rate that's better for your build because you're applying lots of status effects. Or you might have a gun that's configured to just do a lot of damage on hit, and so you take a lower fire rate and you can get all that together. So all of that is to say, like, I am playtesting it, I'm seeing the patterns that sort of arise in terms of what gun parts I regularly choose, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to break those patterns apart by increasing either the randomness of the gun parts or increasing the meaningfulness of the choice that you can make when you're making a gun part decision. And I think that's working out really well, because there are situations where, you know, I'll get a gun part that has like 50 more DPS than the one I'm using, but I just really like the bullets that I'm using, like the Necromancer bullets, for instance, which are skeletons. Or, I lose 2 rune slots and so I keep it. Or like, I like the fire rate that I have, even though it's not doing as much DPS. So anyway, so all that is a long-winded way of saying, no, I'm not collecting usage statistics, but I am taking note of myself when I play test, what passives I tend to choose, which passives I tend to not to choose, which gun parts I gravitate towards, and I'm actively making it so that those choices become a lot harder to make, not because everything's made worse, but because everything's made better. So that's my approach to like the passives too. Whenever I'm watching someone play or whenever I'm playing myself and I notice that a passive is just not being chosen that much because it's not attractive, I just make it more attractive. So with the dash reload, this passive used to be that all it did was just reload your guns when you dashed. And that was just like not very useful. So what I did is I kept the reloading on dash, but then I gave it a period of time where it has infinite ammo and a higher fire rate. And so now it becomes a lot more compelling, right? Because you can actually increase your DPS momentarily after dashing. So yeah, that's just kind of how I'm approaching it. I don't think I need the usage statistics because the game is small enough where I can kind of see on a run-to-run basis which things are more attractive than other things. And I'm still actively addressing a lot of those things. Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, is this still not working? What is going on here? Oh, I didn't... Wait a minute. Oh. It would help if I actually you know, put the pillar at the right position. I like that. It could be good for the last example where you're giving. If you have slow fire rate, high DPS, that dash passive will get a lot of DPS. Yeah. So the other thing is that because it's infinite ammo, this is the dirty little secret, so don't tell anyone, but there's an affix in the game which increases your bullet damage by 250% for the first bullet in the magazine. But when you have infinite ammo active, every bullet is the first bullet in the magazine. So that means that you could build a build centered around massively increasing your first bullet damage and then having that dash reload passive. And then you dash into an enemy and you just deal like thousands of damage instantaneously. So don't tell anyone about that because it's really OP. But yeah, that is something that you can do. And again, that wasn't something that I designed. That was just a natural consequence of like buffing that passive. And it was a happy accident, and I'm leaving it in the game because I want players to be able to discover that and go. I want players to have that moment of like, wait, oh my gosh, this is going to be so broken, and then it works, you know? Should that pillar be bigger? Trying to figure out if that's useful at all. One of those, it's a feature, not a bug, yeah. Never noticed while playing. Build crafting. Yeah, there are a lot of, I can't take credit for like, some of the interactions here look absolutely genius if I'm being honest, but it's not because I intentionally designed it that way. It's just the way that the systems naturally interact with each other just produce all kinds of happy accidents like that. And sometimes I'll notice something like that that's almost there, like, oh, this would almost be a really cool build, but then I need to like add a little something to it, you know? But that's the whole point of playtesting. I think, let me see. I think that pillar could be good. I just need to... Do I need to make it bigger? If I just slightly increase the size, like if I did 18 by 36. Just make this slightly bigger. How many runes do I have? 30 runes, look at that. $30 runes and 21 gun types, 63 gun parts total. I'm hoping that will be closer to 70 by release. Well, 70 is not divisible by 3, but you know what I mean. So yeah, if you could, like, this will be really good for builds where, like, if you want to dash into an enemy and kill them, then you get a pillar and you can kind of just, like, use it to block bullets and whatnot. I like this. I think it doesn't last for very long, but I think what would be cool is if I could make a wall of pillars based on how, let me think. If I have multiple occurrences, what I'll do is, let me think about this. I wonder if I take the tangential vector. If I take a vector from the player to the enemy that's dying, take the tangent of that vector, or I guess the perpendicular vector, and then spread the pillars out across that vector. So it ends up being like a wall that is perpendicular to the player when the enemy dies. I think that would be cool. And then I can spread out the pillar spawns along that vector. Let me see if I can get that working. So I think orthogonal is the word. So let's do this. Vector 2 positions is equal to new, and then we're going to do handler arguments dot affix occurrences. New vector 2. Can I do this? No. New vector 2. Okay, so we're going to create a positions vector here. Positions 0. Well, let's see. If handler arguments dot affix occurrences is greater than 1, else we'll just say positions 0 is equal to, and we'll take this. Positions I, position 0 is equal to entity collision event dot entity dot global position. So if it's only one pillar, then we'll just spawn it right on the entity. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll get the direction to the player. So this dot get player. Oh my gosh. Var player is equal to entity collision event dot bullet component dot get player. If player is equal to null, we'll just return false. Var direction is equal to player dot direction to player dot global position dot direction to entity collision event dot entity dot global position. Var perpendicular is equal to direction dot orthogonal. For int I equals 0. I don't want to use int. Var I equals 0. I is less than positions dot length I plus plus. Wait, how do I want to do this? Perpendicular. Perpendicular length is equal to, let's do this. What did I say it was? 18 pixels. So we'll do like a 20 pixel gap then. Private const int pillar spacing is equal to 20. So perpendicular length is equal to pillar spacing times handler arguments dot affix occurrences. Okay, so that's our perpendicular length, and then so if that ends up being 40, for instance, I need to take half the length. So var, let's call it start position, is equal to entity collision event dot global position dot entity dot global position plus perpendicular times perpendicular length divided by 2. Var end position is equal to that same thing, except we're going to do subtracting. So the start position is going to be half one direction of the perpendicular, and the end position is going to be half the other direction of the perpendicular. And then, so that's our start and end position. It can't just do divided by 3, can I? Let me think. No, I need to do minus. So if there's 2 pillars, there's only one. Wait a minute. 2 pillars. Yeah, there will be 1 gap between the pillars, and if there's 3 pillars, there will be 2 gaps between the pillars. Am I thinking about this wrong? Should I do something different? Oh boy, am I going to be tripped up by this basic math? Will there be any Steam achievements? Yeah, there are Steam achievements in the game. There's 11 right now. I may add some more before the release. I may add some more after the release. I don't know. But yeah, there will be Steam achievements. Wait, this should just be really simple, shouldn't it? I'm going to reverse these to where the end position is going to be in the direction of the perpendicular. Okay, so positions I is equal to start position plus perpendicular times pillar spacing times I, right? Is that right? Or am I thinking about this wrong? I think that's right. So if I is 0, it's going to just be at the start position. If I is 1, it's going to be start position plus the direction of the perpendicular times the pillar spacing. So it's going to be 20 pixels in the direction of the perpendicular. Yeah, that should work. Maybe not though. Why do I have this end position then? I don't need that end position. Okay, well, let's see what happens. I'm sure there's something that I've done wrong here. Seems almost too easy. So yeah, what I should see is I should see 2 pillars placed on opposite ends of the enemy that dies. So let's see. Spawn rat. Oh, I forgot. Wait. Oh, did I do my math wrong already? Okay, well, let's step through this and see what's happening. Oh boy. I knew it was going to be... I think there's probably just a minor mistake in here somewhere that I'm not catching. I thought at least the positions would be somewhat accurate, but I guess I was wrong about that. That's 40, that's correct. Entity collision event, global position, perpendicular. What was my direction? 8, 4. Oh yeah, that sounds right. Or that looks right. Global position. This should be 20. Or wait. Oh no. Never mind. Okay. Start position, perpendicular, times pillar spacing. $250, $260. Yeah, I mean, those seem reasonable. Am I doing something wrong with this? Oh, that worked. What? Hold on a second. Why did that work all of a sudden? Oh, maybe it's the poison that's killing him. I should probably put this on a weapon that doesn't do DPS. Or damage over time. Okay, maybe that's why. Oh, goodness. Let's put it on the shotgun. We'll just make it easier. Oops, wrong gun. There we go. Nice. So now I can have a couple of pillars at once that provide a nice little bigger safety zone. Now what happens if I do 3 pillars? Yeah, that looks good. So yeah, the more pillar affixes you get, the more pillars you get. So you could put like 5 of them on and create a whole wall that just blocks everything, and then you can shoot through it. That's pretty dope, actually. Nice. Okay, and then let's see this. Spawns 1 pillar, spawns 3 pillars that block enemy bullets if an enemy is killed on bullet hit. Awesome. I think that's feeling pretty good, actually. Get rid of all those for now. So obviously got to do art and animations for that, but feeling pretty good about that affix, actually. I think it's going to be kind of a niche choice, I think, for a lot of builds, but I could definitely see it being useful. Like, I'm thinking of a situation where if I want to play more aggressively, I can dash into a group of enemies, kill an enemy instantly with like a very high damage bullet, like first magazine shot or whatever, first bullet of a full magazine. And then that instantaneously spawns pillars, which gives me protection now that I'm inside of a group of enemies. Or, you know, just having, you know, just even killing enemies at range, it gives you some opportunities to be a little bit interesting with your positioning, right? So that you can sort of put the pillar in between you and a dangerous group of enemies and just have a lot of those bullets being blocked for you. I think it's going to be interesting. I'll have to do some playtesting for sure, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to be useful. And if it's not useful, I can always buff it a little bit or remove it. So we'll see. But let's see, initial work on pillar affix. Excellent. Cool. All right, well, that's going to be it for the stream today. I'm going to go grab myself some lunch, but thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here and for chatting. Gunforged is releasing on February 17th. So if you haven't wishlisted, please wishlist that in the description below. You can also purchase one of my Udemy courses on Udemy. The links for those are in the description below if you want to learn how to build a complete game in the Godot engine. And what else? Yeah, everything's in the description, so check that out. And thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to all the lurkers and VOD watchers as well. I know that you're out there. And I will be back at it on Monday. I may end up doing a stream or two during the weekend. Again, I don't really have a weekend schedule, so just hit the notification bell and you'll be notified when I go live, if I go live. Otherwise, I'll see you back here Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. All right? Okay, have a good day, everyone, and I will talk to you later.